All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the August 12th, 2021 ACEA meeting. Call to order. First thing on the list is other matters.
I've got to do the preamble.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, Richie.
As traumatic as that is, I'm gonna have to do it. So, all right, here we go. Because of the continuation of the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held electronically over the Zoom platform. It is authorized by the county's declaration of local emergency, the county's continuity of government ordinance, this authority's resolution, and Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2A subsection 3. The authority directors are not physically present at a single central location, as it is unsafe or impractical to do so because of the pandemic and the county's declaration. The authority directors are participating electronically. This meeting is being held according to Section 6 of the county's continuity of government ordinance. All authority members will identify themselves and state their general physical location during the roll call, which we will hold next. The public has real-time audiovisual access to this meeting over Zoom and real-time audio access over telephone. Both is provided in the lawfully posted meeting notice. The public is also invited to offer live comment during the meeting's public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone interested in commenting should send a chat or question. It might also be a raise hand feature, I'm not sure, to the meeting facilitator, or use the raise hand feature. If you are listening by telephone, please use the *9 feature to notify the facilitator. All speakers must identify themselves in the magisterial district where they live or have a business. Public is always invited to send messages, comments, and suggestions to the authority through the county's Community Development Office at any time. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on Albemarle County's website. So let's see, Jay Fennell.
Present at my residence in Free Union, Virginia, Charlotte, Albemarle County.
Peter Taylor.
In my residence in Albemarle County.
Let's see, John Moore. Sherry Buttrick.
Here, Independent Republic of the Whitehall District.
Rose, did Rose make it? Rose Emery? David Emmett.
I'm in my office in Charlottesville, Virginia.
David Mitchell. I know he's here. Oh, his microphone is muted.
He's muted.
David, say hello.
I got it now. There we go. I'm in my home office in Whitehall as well, but not the hardcore Whitehall like you are. I'm on
Jenny Moore. Jenny Moore. I think she's absent. All right, and Hamilton Moses. Chip Moses. All right, so we have 5. That's a quorum.
I'd like to start off by thanking Mr. Taylor for leading the past 2 meetings. Appreciate it. Other matters not listed on the agenda.
You have Rex Linville has his hand raised and he'd like to speak. Rex, please unmute yourself, and your time starts when you start talking. Please state your name and if you're affiliated with an association, and your time starts now.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Rex Linville with the Piedmont Environmental Council. Live in Albemarle County in the Samuel Miller District. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to briefly highlight a report that I think many of you have seen. It was a report looking at the issuance of land preservation tax credits put out by the Virginia Office of Inspector General at the urging of the Secretary of Natural Resources. I sent around to you all maybe 5 minutes ago a letter that was sent from the Virginia United Land Trust. I am also a board member with the Virginia United Land Trusts, and it was a letter in response to that report. The reason I sent it 5 minutes ago is that letter was finalized about 6 minutes ago. So you guys are probably the very first body to see the final version of that is going to the governor's office this afternoon. Once you read that, suffice it to say that the land conservation community across the Commonwealth is pretty unhappy with the results of that universally, and there has been much gnashing of teeth and consternation about the conclusions drawn in that report. It purported to be an audit where in fact it looked at about 25 hand-selected transactions out of a universe of about 2,200 transactions during the period of time in which they claim to have been doing an audit. They essentially applied a retroactive standard to some transactions that does not apply. They basically, didn't assert that these don't, meet the Treasury regs, that they didn't meet the local county ordinance, that they didn't meet the standards and practices of the land trusts holding the easements. All they asserted is that they didn't meet a set of criteria that don't actually apply to these transactions, which is a set of criteria for transactions over $1 million. So a lot of frustration in the land conservation community and a lot of pushback. The Virginia Land Conservation Foundation board may be having a meeting to discuss the findings of this report in September. And I will definitely keep you all apprised. That meeting is actually set for September 7th. There's some pushback that's trying to get that meeting unset on procedural grounds. So be that as it may, I'll keep you posted. It would be great to have folks supportive of land conservation show up at that Virginia Land Conservation Foundation meeting, which will effectively be a forum on the results of that report. So having members of this body, easement donors and others that are supportive of land conservation in Virginia speak at that would be very helpful and advantageous. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Rex.
Thank you, Rex.
I guess I'd just add to keep an eye on where this goes, because I think that one place that Department of Conservation may want it to go is reviewing all or most of the easements themselves and having some either input or control on what the terms of those easements are. So you may want to review when you get to your legislative package for this year, keep an eye and see if there's anything in there and think about how it affects the county.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Rex, for your input too. Yeah, this document seems like something that we as an authority should take a close look at and see how it influences our direction, especially in terms of monitoring and staffing. Anything else on this? All right, let's move on to approval of minutes. I'm assuming everybody's had a chance to read the June 10th meeting minutes. Any questions or comments? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett. Any discussion? Right, all in favor of approval?
Aye.
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 Any negatives? Okay. Minutes are approved. I will turn the floor over to Mr. Clark.
Ready, thank you. Before I get into tonight's items on the agenda here, 2 or 3 things I want to mention. First of all, we are limited, unfortunately, to a 90-minute meeting tonight. So it is possible we won't finish this agenda. If that's the case, then we'll just move the remaining items off till next month's meeting. We may try to email you all early next week to find an alternative date in September, so we won't have this 90-minute limit, so we can be sure of being able to cover everything. I think we'll probably have a few more new ones by then, plus whatever we don't get through tonight. Also, as a quick reminder, for any votes for the remainder of this meeting, if you could do them as a roll call, that would be really helpful so that we could be sure of getting it down accurately.
Thank you, Scott.
So the first item on the agenda is the Guff easement donation proposal. You all have already approved this and reviewed it in some detail. Just got a slight change to the approval based on the landowner's needs. So I'll just run through this quickly. Mr. Stephen Thompson is here representing the landowners to answer any questions you may have. So just to refresh your memory, this is a 165-acre parcel on Green Mountain Road. Earlier this year, you all approved the proposed building envelopes for any future dwellings that may be built on the site. And here is just side-by-side tables to show the difference between the originally approved terms and what's being proposed now. The one on the right looks a lot longer, but that's just because there's some more detail included. The only item of real substance that changes what's permitted is that previously the existing 1,500 square foot dwelling within the garage structure could be used, but could not be replaced. So if it was destroyed or if it was taken down, it couldn't go back. So the landowners thought that they needed the flexibility of being able to either rebuild that dwelling at the same size in the same location or in one of the building envelopes. That seems reasonable and fair to me, and also doesn't change the number of dwellings eliminated by the deed. So that's the in highlighted yellow there is the main change you're being asked to approve tonight, which is whether or if the garage dwelling is removed, it can either be replaced at the same size in its current location or at the same size in one of the building envelopes. And we would recommend the authority approve that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And again, Mr. Thompson's here in case you have any questions for him.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Any thoughts or concerns, folks?
Scott, a quick question. So how many tax parcels are on the property, and I've forgotten, but are they restricted in terms of sale to their entirety, or could one parcel be spun off that includes a building envelope?
It's one parcel, and the deed would not permit any subdivisions, so there wouldn't be any separation of ownership.
Thank you.
Great. Like no subdivisions. Any other comments or questions?
Move approval.
Second.
All right. Discussion? Okay, roll call, a vote.
I can do it, Jay.
Thank you, Richie.
All right, Director Fennell,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Aye.
Director Buttrick,
Aye.
Director Emmett,
Aye.
and Director Mitchell.
Aye.
Has anyone else joined the meeting? I don't have. Scott, you know, is that everyone?
I can't see the participant list at the moment with my screen shared.
That's all I have.
So, yep.
Okay, so it's 5-0 approved.
Thank you.
Right, great. So moving on to the next item, Gimple. Scott, you're up.
Thank you. All right, so this is a new donation proposal along Ballard's Mill Road. It's a 19.5 acre property with 5 development rights. So it has basically all of its original development potential. 4 of those 5 would be eliminated. Oops. There's an aerial view of the property. You can see by the green translucent overlay that this has got a long boundary with existing easements on 2 sides. There's a proposed riparian buffer that runs along the southern edge and around the pond. Just an oblique aerial to get a better idea what it looks like. Apologize for trimming off the eastern end, but that's the only way it would fit on the screen. So acceptance criteria, this one is in the watershed of the South Fork Ravenna Reservoir and limits development and requires a riparian buffer. And it also shares 2,800 feet, not square feet. Not sure why I type square feet there. 2,800 feet of boundary with existing conservation easements. And the proposed terms would be no subdivisions. The existing dwelling or its replacement up to 4,500 square feet would be the only dwelling. And there's a 100-foot riparian buffer. Everything else is standard. Staff would recommend that the authority accept the proposal, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Scott. Any questions?
Scott, where did the 100-foot riparian buffer recommendation come from? Our standard is 35 feet.
Yeah, I think the number that's in the template is 35. I tend to propose higher than that on properties that are in the reservoir watershed, properties that are on the smaller side and don't have a lot of other specific resources to be protected. So like this one, it was just a way of making it a more effective proposal. The landowners seem to be fine with it, so we went with it.
Do the landowners realize that 35 feet would suffice?
That's a fair question. I can't remember exactly what I discussed with them. If you all object to the 100, we can drop that down. I don't think they're going to turn it down because you reduced the buffer.
I mean, I'm just looking for the stream and I don't remember, I live out this way and I don't remember there being a stream of consequence.
Yeah, it may not be particularly of consequence. I'm just trying to get as much buffering as I can in the reservoir watershed.
Right.
If you all feel that a smaller buffer is more appropriate, we can do that.
Well, I just would say now that we're looking at your aerial of the buffer, beware that buffer that's in a field.
Right.
It
Well,
looks like
the default buffer terms don't require them to be forested or to become forested. The line of trees at the edge of the field would have to stay, but they wouldn't be required to expand that out.
But you'd be required to fence that out, I would assume.
If they were grazing, I don't believe they're grazing anything there.
Well, not at the moment.
Not at the moment.
Yeah, right.
I would feel more comfortable at our standard template buffer.
It's fine.
I concur with that. Who owns the easement on the two sides?
If I remember correctly, it's actually the CS Farm Company, which is one of the authority's recent donors.
Well, I think that if it's CS Farm, it's an old easement that used to be Wick McNeely back in the day, and it's probably Chapel Springs. And I think the other CS thing that you're looking at that we were just talking about is an addition this is a huge property, so it's actually down the road and up another road. And,
Yeah, it's in a different place entirely. Right. No, I wasn't saying that these are the recent donations. It's just the same owner.
Yeah, this is a fairly old BOF easement
Right.
of about 1,400 acres, maybe.
About, yeah. All right, so
Well, I've got the proposal as being amended to 35 feet for the riparian buffer as opposed to 100.
are we all in agreement on that?
Yes.
Yes.
And I think when the landowners really urge us to do a buffer, particularly if it's in the woods, that's bigger, there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want to give the landowners an impression that they have to do it. Also, on the eastern side of this after the pond, the stream appears not to be on the property, but to be on the adjoining land.
Right, it's a one
Yeah,
side.
it crosses back and forth over the line. So
Yeah.
I was
yeah,
buffering
yeah.
from the stream and not from the stream that was in the properties. And you get a bizarre, nonsensical kind of buffer that you can't really find on the ground with gaps in it.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm just trying to give ease of monitoring by making the suggestion that when you've got a significant stretch of buffer without a fence in the middle of the field, that you may be looking for a violation.
That's a good point.
Good. Nice. All right. Any other issues that we need to take into account?
Well, there's the obvious one of the size of the parcel. We should at least comment on it.
Yes, I agree.
So just, I'll chime in for a second. To some extent, I think we're a victim of our own success. So you get these densely eased areas, and a smaller fill-in easement that's contiguous like this one can be extraordinarily valuable, and the overall conservation value of a region is perhaps too strong a word. But were this not connected to conservation land, I think, in my view, it would be more problematic. But the fact that it abuts other eased properties really increases its value, even though the parcel is small.
And also because it's got its 5 division rights.
Yes.
Right. These are supporting factors for this, but you're definitely correct that we need to keep this in mind moving forward, that isolated islands smaller than our 40 acre per dwelling, I feel like we need to avoid in the future.
Yeah, and I usually do either avoid those unless they have something really notable on the site that's important to protect, or tell the landowners that the best I can do is present it to the authority for a "what do you think" rather than a real recommendation, because sometimes people insist on having their day in court, and that's fine. But yeah, I got the message. Yeah, great. It's just, I get that if it's a small parcel with extraordinary protection of natural resources, then it makes sense. Is there any more discussion on this? Thoughts? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Emmett.
Is that for approval with the 35-foot buffer?
I've noted the proposal was amended to 35 feet on that buffer.
Yep.
And so that's what the authority is voting on.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this before we move to vote? All right, roll call, Richie, please.
Let's say Jay.
Aye.
Pete Taylor.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Dave Emmett.
Aye.
Dave Mitchell.
Aye.
All right, that's everyone.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you all.
moving on. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Richie. Moving on to the Smith donation proposal.
Right. This is an 80-acre parcel down off of Old Lynchburg Road. And here's a map of the property showing, that's great, Scott. I managed to cover up the road. I was going to use a reference with my map legend there. In any case, down here at the lower right is where Old Lynchburg goes by. This is the 80-acre parcel here. Currently wooded, has been logged in the past. Landowner intends to do some timbering there at least one more time. And this double magenta line you see crossing here is the 700-foot base elevation of the county's mountain protection area as defined in the comprehensive plan. And there's a buffer here. That orangey overlay there is critical slopes. So it's up on the ridge and it is quite steep. Acceptance criteria is extensive areas of critical slopes. It does have a mountain protection area. Almost the entire property is in important hardwood forestry soils. And it while it doesn't share any actual boundary with an existing conservation easement, it does meet one other point. Terms would be no subdivisions, one new dwelling up to 4,500 square feet, no structures, dwellings or otherwise above that 700-foot elevation line, both to prevent erosion and to protect the scenic quality of the property. Agriculture and forestry are standard, except that above 700 feet, it would have to be replanted to hardwood forest rather than being cleared for agriculture. In this case, I recommended a 50-foot riparian buffer. A larger one would have potentially gotten in the way of access to the property. So that's what we went with. And again, staff recommends the authority accept the proposal, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott.
Scott, did you say that there is a restriction on building above the 700-foot level? Or did you
Yes.
just mean the forestry paragraph requires replanting above that level?
So timbering, commercial timbering is allowed to continue on this property, but it can't be clearing for agriculture above 700 feet, but the elevation restriction for structures also applies.
Okay, that's what I wanted. Thank you.
Oh, Scott, could, you may not know the answer, this may not be a fair question, but could a dwelling be built on this property given the critical slopes?
Sure, yeah, there's actually plenty of room for more than one. This is 80 acres, and everything here that doesn't have that orange overlay on it is out of the critical slopes and is effectively a buildable area, except for maybe the 100 feet within 100 feet of the stream. I can't recall if this one's perennial or not, to be honest, but in any case, yeah, there's plenty of room where multiple dwellings could be built on here.
Thank you. And just for, I've read this, but again, getting old, tell me how many division rights the property has pre-easement?
Left that out. I'm sorry. I believe it has 5. So that would be a total of about 8 parcels. It could theoretically be divided into 2. It's probably not quite that many because of the slopes, but certainly in the 4 to 6 range.
Thank you.
Where is the current access to this parcel?
There's a driveway up here, and there's an access road that comes across these other parcels. That would obviously have to be formalized and improved quite a bit for this to be developed as a subdivision, but it is possible. I think what's there now is just the forestry road from the most recent cut. You can see it going around the end of the stream buffer here, and it goes across the neighboring properties to this driveway up here.
And where is Walnut Creek?
So Walnut Creek is
Or the park?
farther north.
Park.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Walnut Creek Park is farther to the north on Old Lynchburg.
Okay.
Got it. Any other questions? Scott, thank you for the presentation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
All right. All right, so is that Dave Emmett, was that you or was that
Peter
Peter?
Taylor made the motion.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mitchell, seconds. Is there any further discussion? If not, we'll move to the vote. Richie, roll call.
Say Director Fennell,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Aye.
Director Buttrick,
Aye.
Director Emmett,
Aye.
Director Mitchell.
Aye.
All right, so that's unanimous.
Great. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you very
moving
much.
forward. Ready for the Cornell?
This is the Cornell donation proposal, which always catches me up because I think they're talking about my college, not about the Lindener.
Nice.
Every time I see that, it confuses me. Like, I already paid those guys. All right, so 46.6 acres at the very northeastern side of the county. This proposal would eliminate approximately 5 potential dwellings. You can see here, this is right on the county boundary. And Route 22 is over here, Route to Gordonsville.
Is this property entirely within Albemarle or is some of it in Orange?
I believe it's entirely within Albemarle. I can double check that in just a second.
Okay, just wondered. This is Magnolia, Peter, I think.
Okay,
Off of Lover's Lane, I think, probably.
yeah, that, some of that creeps into Louisa County, I think, up there. Briefly.
All right, so property does have some critical slopes near the streams. About the western third is within the mountain protection area. Again, that's the same 700-foot line, although a different ridge. The wooded portion of the property was identified as part of an important large forest block by the Natural Heritage Committee, and it's within the Southwest Mountains Rural Historic District. Terms would permit no subdivisions, one dwelling up to 4,500 square feet. Let's see, and this one, apologize, this is one we did quite a time ago and it's coming back to me now. Dwellings and other structures to be in the cleared areas. The natural forest provisions that we have used in the past would apply. And although there isn't a specific buffer proposed, the protection of the forest cover would effectively create one. And,
Is there one dwelling or are there plural dwellings?
This would permit one dwelling. I believe there are no dwellings at the moment.
Okay, I mean, just tweak your summary sheet when you can, because it says, the second thing says dwellings and other structures.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
And we do not have a building envelope prescribed on this, is that correct?
No. It's possible that once these folks hire an attorney to represent them, that they may come back and say they want one, and we could do it the same way we did with Guff. So far, I've only been working with the landowners, and they haven't mentioned that they want to do that. It's not something that we push for. It's usually something that the donors, tax experts, and our attorneys will recommend to them.
It's probably important, Scott, though, that they know to consider this. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't know. And
Right.
if their easement got disallowed because there was no envelope, that would be too bad if we didn't at least point to the situation and ask their counsel to brief them on it.
Right. Yeah, which I don't know that they even have yet, but obviously we would expect them to before we review a deed from them.
Yeah, and if you get the sense that everybody's clueless, just be sure that
Yeah.
to the situation.
Again, I apologize for not being totally up to speed, but our template does not prescribe building envelopes, even though the IRS is making a big point of it now. Is that correct?
That's correct. We generally have avoided doing building envelopes in the past and have tried to stick more with defining avoidance areas.
So we haven't, again, there's no language in this proposed easement that has avoidance areas. Is that correct?
Well, it does by
Riparian buffer and
the riparian buffer and the forest cover protections. Which is typically, that's what I mean by avoidance areas, is if we call out specifically a riparian buffer or an area of slopes or an area of some resource not to be disturbed, that's the avoidance area. And then the rest of the property is freely available for whatever structures are permitted, which is just a lot more workable and practical over the long term for the landowners and for the holder than trying to define something down to whether it's inside a box or just barely outside or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the holders prefer not to have envelopes, but there's also been a great move towards them because of the IRS cases. And
Yeah.
so we just want to make sure everybody's aware.
So could we vote on this with the contingency that they identify a building envelope that's acceptable to you, Scott and Richie?
Well, I don't think you need to worry about that, because if they come back and say they're going to do them, we will bring it back to you like we did for Guff, for you all to approve them, because we understand that that's the authority's desire, is to approve specific envelopes. So
One amendment I would suggest is if they identify a building envelope that's within the existing cleared areas. It seems to me, I mean, right now, the way the proposal is the authority is allowing the dwelling to be built in the existing cleared areas. If they want to narrow that down, it seems to me that should be acceptable without having to come back.
Can we go back to the map for a moment, please?
I agree with Richie's comment.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Strictly from also a monitoring issue, because cleared areas potentially change over time also.
Yeah, well, we would definitely map them as part of the deed. I don't usually do that approach, and having done it once, I may not do it again, but having some regrets now. But we would certainly have that in a map in the deed that shows where those areas were at the time of recordation.
Okay.
God, I'm sorry to be a pest. Can you do a contour overlay on this map?
Can't from this presentation, but if you hang on just a second, I can do it from the GIS web, which I also have open. Just a second. That's 37.1. This is kind of amazing. When I first started working for the county and doing maps, I was doing them on paper with ink. And if anybody wanted to change, it was going to take a while. Now we can do this.
If you can navigate that system, that's a skill in and of itself, Scott.
Well, when you use it every day, it gets easier. All right, so let me pull up the aerials underneath that. Let's see if this works for you. So right in here, here's the 700-foot line. So everything from there up is in the mountain protection area. I can also turn on the critical slopes if that would help.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't gonna be a house on top of the Southwest Mountains. That's
right. You know, the open areas are definitely at the lower end of the property.
Thank you.
I mean, it seems to me that, I think this is probably Richie's point, that if they pick an envelope that's in the cleared area and is otherwise consistent with the easement, we don't really need to see it again, do we?
It works for me if it's okay with everybody in the authority.
There's a whole lot of feedback from somewhere.
Mr. Clark, there's just a lot of background noise in your location right now, just so you know.
Okay, thanks. Let me see how I can fix that.
All right. Is everybody else still on? Sherry, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. It's like a lot of people muted. Where are we headed?
I would like to see that initial plat that was shown before he put up the contours.
With the red line in the
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so when he put up the contours, that cleared property back above the 700 foot wasn't clear.
Those are critical slopes.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, I think that was the reason for wanting to know where the 700 foot line, they didn't want something built near the top, but those cleared fields there, whatever they are, weren't on the picture that Scott showed with the contour overlay.
Aren't those simply opaque tan blobs that are actually forest underneath?
Are
Yeah.
they?
Yes, those
Oh.
are that's a critical slope overlay.
Ah, shoot. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
Yep, got it.
Yeah, so the map I have doesn't have the overlays, and it just shows over that 700 feet to be solid forest.
Yeah, sorry. That's, I didn't read the legend there.
It's all right. All right, so where are we headed from here?
I'll move approval if you want.
I will second that.
So does that approval, is it contingent upon them providing us with an acceptable building area or not?
So the way I'm taking it is it's a motion to approve the proposal, but to allow the landowner to include a building envelope that's within the cleared area.
And the advantage of that would be
You just don't
primarily
have,
for us. We don't have, for them, they don't have to come back to us.
right, that's right.
So that's just going to be written in the margins. That's not part of the agreement.
I think Scott's going to clarify it in the agreement, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it's not in the terms of the proposal. It's just a note in the motion so that we know how to handle what comes back to us from their eventual attorney,
Okay.
whether they propose, allowing the whole open area or whether they decide that they need a smaller building envelope. As long as it's still within that cleared area, then we know that either one of those options is approved by you all and they don't need to come back.
Yeah, they could simply declare all of that bottom third cleared area as a big building envelope. I mean,
Yeah, they
they
could.
could do that, and I think that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Right.
Right.
But
It's
but
easy for us to
for optics, Richie, in what you described, it sounded like describing a building envelope was optional. And again, to me, it's fine to say the building envelope will be in the cleared land, but it's a requirement, not an option. I think that's a distinction we should make because for all the reasons we can think of.
So I'm considering it to be optional, just leaving it to the landowner and the landowner's attorney so that we're not pushing it on them. But if the modified proposal is to require a building envelope, that's fine too.
But it looks like the terms of the easement, even without a building envelope, are that buildings and other structures must be located in the existing cleared areas.
I just don't want us to represent that that's going to be sufficient for the IRS if that's where they're headed.
No, but I was just trying to give Peter some comfort that there wasn't going to be a house on top of the mountain.
Yeah. So Sherry, I thank you. And I that's wonderful. But to me, we're getting to the same place, and one obviates scrutiny both for the donor and potentially for our body. and ends up at the same outcome. So that's why I had suggested that it's a requirement, not an option. You do this for a living, so you may have a more informed view, but that's where I was going with this.
So you were saying that we definitely should require a building envelope and that it should be, because it already has to be, in the cleared area? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. Yes, I just think.
Yeah, I think
optically-
it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. From my standpoint, I just want to make sure that Scott is sure that everybody was informed about the IRS cases and situation, in case you get a lawyer who's not accustomed to this field and is not aware. I don't want the landowner to record an easement with no knowledge at all. And I do think we need kind of a disclosure form, unless we're going to go to envelopes.
Well, Sherry, I agree with you 100%. So in your opinion, if we were to make it a requirement, which again is consistent with the terms of what's described in the easement, doesn't that get to the same place for the donor? In other words, that requires a proactive step in terms of what's recorded.
Yeah, I mean, if I were probably, drafting this easement, I would say that buildings and structures shall be located within an area or envelope defined on Exhibit A of the existing cleared areas, because it basically says the same thing.
Exactly.
Or if they find it insufficient to have such a big envelope, that our motion covers the fact that we're fine with a smaller one in that area. Either way, I think is fine, because it gets you, as you say, to the exact same place.
I agree on the clarification though of what you just suggested, Sherry.
So I take it that the building envelope, whatever it will be, is mandatory. That
Yeah,
they need
but
to,
it could simply be the entire cleared area if they want.
right, that's their call.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But just putting the word in envelope, when the IRS agent does a word search and finds the word envelopes, maybe he'll move on, you know?
Yep.
Great. Feel like we had some a motion on the board. We
So
leave it-
moved.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. Is there any further discussion? So
Yeah,
Scott,
Could you read back the, that clause that we're putting in there about the building?
The proposal, subject to building envelope, must be identified. And the language I'd use is it must be within the cleared area, or I have to find a word, but either coterminous or, the same as, whatever a good word for that is, with the cleared area.
Yeah, that either it is the entire cleared area
Yeah.
or it is located within the cleared area.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
yeah. You got that, Richie?
I do.
Excellent.
Are we ready for a vote? Any other discussion?
All right, let's move to roll vote.
Director Fennell,
Aye.
Director Taylor,
Aye.
Director Buttrick, Director Emmett,
Aye.
and Director Mitchell.
Aye.
All right, so that's 5-0.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Is there any new business?
Oh,
Yep. All right, there's no new business. We can move on to old business. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hang on.
when do we get our signs? No, I'm sorry, I really am. I'm sorry. We were just about to set a record for meetings, so I don't want to ruin that.
So this is, I think this constitutes old business, but where do we stand on the whole monitoring issue and the staffing requirements that entails?
This is a question for Scott.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. We are still in the same situation that we were when we last talked about this and earlier this year, which was that we don't have our usual student intern, but we do have Chess Goodall from the ACE program, who is spending a good amount of his time on monitoring not just the ACE easements, but he's added in the authority's donated easements while the ACE program has slowed down during the pandemic and budget problems. So that's a temporary solution. I have no news to offer on any additional staffing becoming available. Whether that will happen in the next couple of years is entirely up to the board. And until then, we'll be working off of, Chess's spare time, my spare time, and if we get the pandemic under control, I hope we'll be able to go back to hiring the interns. Ideally, of course, we'd like to get to the point of having a dedicated person to do that, but that's just not funded yet.
Can I make my usual annual point that it would be good to check with the finance department and make sure that the money that's supposed to come to us from the state for monitoring, depending on how many easements we did over the last 3 years, that in fact, we found that money and it's been allocated to the appropriate fund and not simply absorbed by the county?
Sure. Rich and I can look at that. I don't remember the latest update right now, but we can dig into it and provide a report on that.
Yeah, I think especially now when everything is just a little bit different and distant, it's a good idea to make sure that that money didn't just flow through the cracks and into something else.
The general fund.
Yes, precisely. It did. My reason for being paranoid about this is that did happen initially.
It happened once, yeah.
Right.
And I do have a vague recollection that that we checked certainly within this year. And I thought there was a deposit or a credit, I think around November, but we'll check back into that.
Yet another of the disadvantages of having only a part-time staff assignment to a program of this size is that we've kind of defaulted to dumping the business and fiscal aspects on the county attorney's office instead of having a staff liaison who has access to all that all the time and can just easily pop up that kind of fiscal information. So again, if we are able to expand staffing sometime in the next few years, hopefully you would be able to get that anytime you ask for it, just by having the staff liaison tied directly into that.
Scott, I don't know if this is relevant, but you have, I want to say on August 18th, maybe August 18th or in September, you're appearing before the Board of Supervisors to provide a status update to the easement programs.
Right. It is actually not this month. It's September 15th.
Okay.
There's going to be some deals. I believe Chess is going to be there talking about a couple of ACE purchases with the funding that remains. And I'm just going to do a fairly basic informational presentation about easements and the county's easement programs for the board. Of course, they don't spend the time on it that you all do, so they won't be as familiar with it. And it's just one step toward getting them more informed and more involved in what's going on.
I think if it's possible, and if we're having in-person meetings, that insofar as some of us can go to that in order to show support or write an email ahead of time when the agenda's out indicating support, the board doesn't necessarily think about this program very much. And it would be good for them to know that there is county support for it.
And they take public comment. So if there were authority members who wanted to speak up at public comment and advocate for whatever you want to advocate for, that would be an opportunity.
Sure.
One
I mean,
thing
that would be-
is, one thing I have expressed concern about is the sheer volume of properties that that the county and this authority have under their in their portfolio. And I just having that volume and not having a full-time person who's monitoring it and educating the landowners, to me is just it's a bomb waiting to go off.
Yeah,
So-
and we might explain to the board about the funding that comes from DCR or TAC. And we also might, well, it's not really this program, it's more ACE, explain that the state has farmland protection money and, you know, make sure that they know that there are these state pots of money that come along that we can use for monitoring, you know?
Right, that's a good point.
I'd be happy to comment at the Board of Supervisors meeting. But I would like it if we could possibly script something for me to read. So we get the salient points in and some of the facts and details without overwhelming.
Jay, if you'd like, I can set up a time with you to just go over it's yet another PowerPoint, for which I apologize, but I can go through it with you so you can see what's in there. And then if you'd like to, I don't know, say an introductory word at the beginning before I start or something like that, we can figure something out.
Okay, that would be great.
I speak to our representative frequently, very frequently, and my impression is that they would be potentially sympathetic to the needs of hiring a monitoring person.
Well, that's good.
Good.
If we can, if there are any easement donors who, you know, are particularly enthusiastic about the program, or maybe even counsel like Lee Rasmussen or somebody, you know, somebody from the general public who's been a user of the program, that would probably also be a good thing to have in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, I've only got a certain amount of time to get through this. You know, the board meetings they're very quick, but we'll see what we can do. I will just let you all know, as staff, I can't really go in there and do an advocating for more funding kind of presentation.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not
we
done,
know,
but
we know.
it's just going to be informational.
That's our job.
And some other members of the public that might come don't have to be within your time frame. They could come and speak in their 3 minutes if we can,
Right. Yeah.
you know, rally a couple of them. Peter,
Yeah.
maybe you can help me think of who they are.
I'll try to recruit Lee.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Don't let them bill you.
No way.
Well, and I think back anecdotally, and I think I've said this before, and I know I've written it, is we did have that one property that was tagged as having junk vehicles and some trash that was being stored there, and that potentially could have been a difficult situation where the authority would have had to take legal action. But fortunately, through zoning and Scott's efforts, they were able to work with the landowner to resolve that. I don't know that that's always going to be the case. And when you get second, third generation landowners who want to do what they want to do with the property, I know how strongly those cases can be fought, and that could be a significant burden on the county, on the authority. And so if we don't have anyone who can help us with that, then educating the landowners, then that puts us at risk.
No,
Right.
that's exactly right. And also that's why every year I ask for the $10,000 to be put in the legal fund.
Right. I think it's also a good point, like that piece of property, especially showing that we are not absolutely separate, but working with the county, because that would not have been a good resolution if zoning hadn't kind of taken the lead on that too.
Yeah, it would have been a lot harder to pull that off.
Yeah. All right. So Scott, you and I will get together at some point.
Okay, that'd be great.
I have just I have one question that's, is it appropriate for a member of this board to accompany staff on monitoring or to even provide an extra person to do that till such time we get a full-time trained person? Is that appropriate or?
I think it is appropriate. I certainly would suggest no more than 2 authority members, because
Yeah.
then you have the risk of the public meeting. Um,
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
And
Scott,
also, if any of us go, we would have to have some training on what the county wants to have as a product.
Right.
exactly. Good point.
I'm not training Sherry. Sherry can train me.
Well, I'm just asking more out of curiosity, but you know, I personally might be willing to help out in the meantime. I'm just asking if it's appropriate. I don't have a certificate.
I mean, my
There is
view
no
is
certificate.
that there's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. Sometimes the question could be, do I want to do that? Because if I see things that turn out to be a violation or a breach of the easement, now we're going to spend the rest of my natural born life in court.
Well,
It might be awkward being the field representative and then being one of the decision makers, but I don't see anything wrong or inappropriate about it.
Great. Good question. Is that it for old business? Glad we handled that. Scott, Peter, thank you for bringing that up. Move to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
so
Do we need a, all right. Do we need a roll call on this? No.
No. Everybody raise his hand.
All in favor?